Hello everyone, today we're going to meet with Martin, who has a sound system, a HiFi sound system of $500,000 Canadian dollars, which is about above $350,000, which is significant money. Why someone invest that money into a sound system? So we're going to talk about, we're going to enter the mind of an audiophile today. But also, we'll learn a little bit about the business of HiFi. So stay tuned. So I have to be thankful to Martin to give us access to his private space, his audio private room. It's something very personal and for an audiophile, and whenever a HiFi fan shows you his system, it speaks about the person as well. So without further ado, let's meet with Martin.
Hello everyone, my name is Martin Labrec and I'm the proud owner of this sound system that I'm going to talk about for the next couple of minutes. And I'm also going to describe a little bit about the room. I'm an audiophile, I would say, since the late 80s. I was living in the UK at the time and I came back with the bug, which is the audio bug, and being an audiophile. So I think the room itself is very important, and I have the chance to have a dedicated room here. And so the size of the room is about 15 wide by 27 the length, and the ceiling is about 10 feet high. So this is a very nice room in the sense of being acoustically treated. And I have a guy here in Montreal who did all my acoustic. And this is my third room. I used to have my first house, was in the basement. The room was not all that great. And then my second home, which I lived for about 14 years, had a similar size room and a similar sound treatment. And so I use the same recipe in this house, which we built the room in 2018, so 5 years ago. And, you know, you learn from your mistakes and you improve over time. And I'm telling you this because when you have a system of this caliber, the room is quite important. It's maybe 50% of the final result. So if you don't have a dedicated room, and most people don't have a dedicated room, you can still do some stuff to improve the room. But when you have a room dedicated to sound, you can really focus on the sound itself. So what I'd like to say right now is to present a little bit of the system that I use. And I've spent a lot of money on my system, and I can live with that because I'm looking for the best sound that we can get. And luckily enough, most of the components I'm going to describe to you are built in Montreal. And so we have a lot of smart people like Joe, who just talked to you about the Baetis. But in terms of the amplification side, I would like to present to you the preamplifier that is made by Tenor Audio. Tenor Audio is a Montreal-based company that has been in business for about 22, 23 years. And they built this preamp for about 20 years. And the preamp has its own power supply, which is at the bottom of this shelf. And this unit here is the phono stage. A phono stage is required, as you know, for playing records, playing a turntable. This preamp section is one of the best in the world, and it provides, you know, the sound that we move into either the Baetis or the turntable. And the turntable that we have here is a Kronos Pro, this particular model. And it's built by a designer in Montreal, Louis Desjardins from Kronos. And it's got its own power supply right here. And I've just added about a year ago the new tone arm, which is developed by Kronos, called the Discovery RS for resonance suppression. And this tone arm is fantastic. It's really making a big improvement to the sound of my turntable. The cartridge is Japanese made. It's called Zix, and I've had it for many years. It's very stable, very good sound, and I'm quite happy about the analog sound. Now, as Joe indicated earlier, with the Baetis, you can have an analog feeling, and I'm very picky about the sound, as you can imagine. So when I got the Baetis a couple of years ago, I was not a digital person at all. I have a big collection of records, and it took me a while to go into the digital world, which has been in existence since the early 80s. But I think now we're reaching a level where analog and digital can coexist, and I'm sort of ambivalent. If I want to listen to record, I listen to record, and the next night I want to listen to the Baetis streaming stuff, and I still get the same satisfaction. And the Baetis is right here. And this particular model also has video capabilities, which I enjoy also. I can watch movies, I can watch music shows, I can watch Netflix, whatever, even Videotron. So it's quite flexible. And one other thing I would like to add about the Baetis experience is that the quality of the service, the client service that Joe has given me over time is impeccable. It's really world class, and I could not insist enough the importance when you have high-end gear to have the service that goes with it. You pay big bucks, but you also have first-class service. And there was an article in Absolute Sound a couple of years ago where they really talk about the merit of the client service at Baetis, and I can attest to you that it's true. And it's very important for me to have support when I have a piece of gear, be my turntable. If I have an issue, I call the designer, and within 24 hours, the problem is solved. So I think that's very important to have this sort of support from manufacturers that sell high-end stuff. And also the rack, which is made in Montreal, is very important too, because you have all this equipment, and these things are electronics. They vibrate. So one of the things that is important in audio, high-end audio, and Joe touched on that situation, vibration will kill the sound. Okay, so there's ways to take care of that vibration and the RFI and all sorts of phenomenon that goes into your system, but the rack is also a critical part of the final result. So you want to invest in a good rack, and you'll be happy about the result. So Joe asked me, over time my system has improved, and from the first time he was here many years ago, like 4 years ago, my system has improved. And one of the biggest improvement that I can feel are the speakers, because these new speakers that I've used for the last 2 years have characteristics that are really special. They are electrostatic speakers, and they're called Dayton Wright's Hommage. And so they were redesigned by a local dealer here in Montreal, and they've redesigned completely the speaker, which existed back in the 80s by the company Dayton Wright, which was based in Ontario and Toronto. And they've made a lot of these speakers over the years, and the speaker was completely redesigned to have a time-coherent frequency structure, and also a new tweeter, which is made in Germany by a company called Mundorf. And so the speaker itself is a big part of the overall sound experience here in this room. And I'm very happy about these speakers. Unfortunately, they are quite limited in terms of production. They will only be probably, let's say, 15 or 20 pairs made for lucky guys like me to be able to experience them. So the speakers, of course, have an importance. I would also say the cables have at this level of quality of a system, the cables do make a difference. So I'm using currently cables from Germany called acoustics, and they do a great job to get the job done. We all have our passions in life, and one of my passion is music. Even though I'm not a musician, I don't play an instrument, I just love listening to music. I can remember I was just a young kid, and I had my first sound system. I was probably, 9 years old, 10 years old. And, you build the passion over time, and this bug becomes even more pronounced. And, I was lucky enough to have a good job for 40 years and be able to pay for my passion. I didn't mention any prices, and I'm just going to say that this room here with all the equipment that I have is probably a bit north of $500,000, $500,000 Canadian. So we're talking serious bucks, but I think I've invested this money wisely. And for example, I'm using the tenor amps. These are the 500 watts, the haute puissance HP, which is the best amplifier that Tenor makes. And they are lovely amplifiers. I've had them for, 18 years, and never had any problems. They work flawlessly, and the sound is really spectacular. They have a hybrid technology, so we're using tubes for the input section and transistors for the output. So you have, the best of both worlds. So you get the benefit of tubes with this warm and analog type of sound, and the transistors for the power to play this system loud enough. Now, another piece that I'm very happy and very proud is the Dayton Wright, as I mentioned earlier. They're made right here in the province of Quebec, and they're limited production, but they have a sound that is extremely fast, extremely transparent, extremely delicate, and also they can be, moving a lot of air. So, they are fast in the sense that they're membranes, electrostatic membranes, so they don't have the weight of a regular driver that moves in and out when he plays music. And these speakers require also interface. I don't know if we can see it, but it's a big power supply, and power supplies are very important for the overall sound, be for amplifiers or the Baetis or the turntable. Power supplies are critical to lower the noise floor. And one of the characteristics of my room is it's very, very quiet. I think it's about 22 dB. I've had it measure a couple of years ago. So it's very quiet. So when you have a system of this caliber, you need to have, very low noise floor. So you can hear the micro information, the little voices. We were just listening to something earlier, a live recording, and you could hear the musicians talking to each other on stage. And that's kind of special for me to hear that kind of nuance, and you can feel the musicians are having a lot of fun playing together. But, if you don't have a room that is quiet, you're not going to hear maybe these tiny little information. The other thing I would like to add is also don't neglect the electricity in your room if you can. So I'm lucky enough to have dedicated lines of power that go straight to my panel, electrical panel. So that also contributes to the final result, because current can be a detraction to good sound. So you have to invest a little bit into that area of the business. And finally, I've put some stuff on the ceiling to absorb some of the frequency and the les ondes stationnaires, how do you call that? Standing waves. Standing waves can be, a bit annoying sometimes, because you hear some echo, and so you need to have a reverb time, ideally of about half a second in a good room. And I think I'm pretty much there. And my room is a little bit, maybe a little bit overdamp, but that's the way I like it. Some people claim that it's a little bit too damped, but I'm comfortable with that sort of sound treatment. And finally, I should mention also that I'm using 2 subwoofers, one on each side of the speakers, just to add an extra layer of bass and just to get access to the last octave of sound, because these panels are pretty much full range, but they will not go deeper than probably, I think it's 40 hertz. So if you like the extra 20 hertz of bass to get that last octave of sound, if you listen to rock bands or even organs and stuff like that, double bass, you'll appreciate the extra bass that you get from the subwoofers. And they're also made in Montreal. So as I said, I would say probably 90% of the system that we have here is made in Montreal, province of Quebec. And that's good. I think we have world-class designers and brains to promote high-end audio. And hopefully that's going to continue.
Oh, I just love
Lay down on the long white table. So cold, so fair, or so bad.
That's really nice.
When I die, please bury me. The box pack gold mine, Stetson high. I put a $20 gold coin on my watch chain, so all the boys can see I died.
Wow.
Standing back.
You're live here.
Yeah, it is live. Wow.
Well, especially in your seating position, right in the middle, so that you get the full effect, full impact. You can hear the musician talk between themselves.
Right. And the notes hang in the air right here.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The note decay
Yep.
floats in the air, right?
Exactly.
Sounds a little bit like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Same guitar style.
Do you have? Is this playing from your own collection or is it streaming? From Tidal?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You know, the first review that we got at the Montreal show.
You know, high fidelity should not be about how expensive the equipment is, and unfortunately, sometimes you have to spend bucks to get good sound. But to me, I want to be impressed, just like I'm impressed if I go to the concert and I listen to classical music or a jazz band. I want to feel the same experience. I don't want to be overwhelmed with big bass and the whole room is shaking. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to have a sound that is natural, that is just like in a live concert or a recording. And when you have a sound system of this caliber, you're going to play different recordings, let's say different pressing. I've started to buy some vinyls that are made in the UK. First UK pressing from Rock Band in the UK. And they do sound different from the Canadian version or the US version or the German version of the same record. We're talking the same record, same recording, but different pressing of that same recording or different engineers. There's a lot of remaster these days. And some of them are crap. They're terrible. They'll charge you $50 for a new pressing, and it sounds bad. But it's got a nice sleeve and, a nice picture book and all that kind of stuff. So to me, high-end audio is about feeling the emotions. When I listen to music, I'm looking for the emotions of the musicians. And I can listen to, Chet Baker playing the trumpet in 1959. And boy, I hear all the musicians, I hear them breathe, I hear their emotions speaking out. And that's what high-end audio is for me. It's about the music. It's not about how expensive your system is, how loud it's going to play. I want to have an experience that is just like in the recording studio or just like at Place des Arts, and I get this buzz from feeling that. So it takes, as we say in French, une chaîne HiFi, a HiFi chain. I don't know if that's a word that we use in English, but basically a chain is as strong as the weakest link of the chain. So it's important to have these components get together and play together. So if I put a cheap cable, be a power cord or an interconnect or whatever, I'm going to hear it right away. It's going to take 5 seconds. Oh, we've changed something. So it's important also to balance your chain or your system so that they all play together. It's kind of like going to an orchestra, and if one of the violinists makes a mistake, you're going to hear it. So same concept. And lucky enough, all the components that I have, they really work well together. And when I introduced the Baetis a couple of years ago, I was kind of skeptical because I was not, as I said, a digital, fan for different reasons. Because at the time when they introduced digital back in the 80s, it was not very good. It was limited by the technology at the time and the sampling rates and all that. I'm not going to go into that, but they've made a lot of progress on the digital end of things. And the Baetis, I think, has maintained the pace of innovation and improvements. And as I said, Joe is here to accompany you in your journey for a better digital sound over time. One other thing about this industry is, Joe alluded to that earlier, it's very competitive. These speakers are built in a garage, okay? And so the barriers to entry are minimal. They're non-existent. But when you find a system that works for you and it can play music, I don't care. So the investment that I've made is really to enjoy the music, not necessarily as a financial reward. And so I'm sure there will be new stuff that will arrive. And there's lots of good manufacturers. And again, the important thing for me is also the support that you will get from a manufacturer, because you never know, things will break down. You'll have issues because it's electronics and it's like cars. They will break, so you need to have good support, and either from the dealer or from the manufacturer itself. I'm lucky enough to have access to a manufacturer like Joe, so that's critical to me. It's a learning process where you hit and miss. You'll do purchases that you will regret because you were influenced by other reviewers or people who don't know what they're talking about. And you can get impressed by magazines or this and that. The only thing I can say is trust your ears. If your ears tell you that it's bad, well, maybe it's bad. And when you get to a certain level of understanding of good sound, and you have good relationships with people that know what they're talking about, then you invest more wisely. So as I said, money is not everything, but it certainly helps. But you can spend a lot of money on expensive gear that is not adequate, that will not get the job done. You maybe it's going to impress your friends for a while, or even yourself. But it's a long-term game playing music. I mean, it's for the rest of your life. So if you don't enjoy it, you're probably going to neglect this passion because it doesn't give you satisfaction anymore. You're going to be involved with other things. I don't know, watching Netflix or doing more sports, but it's important to have a good system to keep the enjoyment level high, and also have a system that will not give you fatigue. We go to shows, and Some rooms I go in there, and after 3 minutes I have to get out because I'm going crazy. I mean, it's not playing music, it's just like big sound, big noise, and so that's not what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for, as I said, finesse, natural sound. I want to hear the instrument. I want to be able to detect what is a violin versus some other instruments, and sometimes you don't get that capability with some sound systems. So that's important to me. As you get more experience in listening to music, your brain sort of opens up to new kinds of music. And certainly the digital world, if there's something that I really enjoy about the digital world now is, let's say when you stream through a system like Tidal or Qobuz or whatever, you discover a lot of stuff. There's the ability to widen your horizon in terms of what is available. I have probably, 2,000 vinyl albums that I've collected since I was, 13 years old or 14 years old. And I'm 64, so you can do the math. So, I mean, it's great, but it kind of limits my horizon to music because, and I haven't heard all these albums. 2,000 is a lot. But when I listen to the Baetis, for example, I'm going to listen to a certain artist, and then as I listen to that artist, they're going to suggest me, the algorithm will suggest me some kind of music that I would love to hear. And most of the time, it's pretty good. If I like this artist, it's going to show me somebody that I don't necessarily know, and I will discover that new music. And these streaming services, they have millions and millions of songs, which I will not have the chance to listen to all of them in my lifetime. But at least, the good thing about streaming is that it also restricts, to some extent, if, you want to listen to, let's say, jazz or music of the world, whatever, you can discover new stuff. And I think that's great.
So we've learned that even financial people have a heart. And that heart is driven by passion for music here. And money isn't everything in life. So for a financial person to say, I spent money that will not grow for me afterwards in terms of money, it speaks that it's really something human going here. I'm really happy about meeting with Martin. I hope him the best with his system now. And one thing he mentioned is his cables. He's trying to upgrade, so he's still pushing to improve and increase the benefits of a HiFi system. He mentioned something important on the business side. There's so many passionate people in HiFi that, there's so much offer. Everybody wants to design a sound system, a speaker, an amplifier, a mic. There's always a new idea. So there's a lot of buzz and trends and things like that. And not that much money for the people who make these things. So the prices are low also because most of the population doesn't really care about the quality of sound or visual. They do care though. So it's a matter of education or experiences. So sometimes it takes someone like Martin to show you what is a very high-end system, and then you say, okay, music can be that good, and then you start to seek for that experience again, and you get the bug, like Martin said, when in the 80s when he was in the UK. Okay, so Joe asks me, what do I think about Martin's systems? Well, as expected, it's incredible. The refinement, it's not that it's detailed, it's like the sound is blossoming, and from the speakers, and you don't, it feels like so natural. And what I like is that Martin didn't put the volume too loud. It was not about blasting the sound, or it was not about the bass or the detail of the very high frequencies, or no, it was just about the beauty of music. It didn't sound like electrostatic speakers. Normally, electrostatic speakers to me sound a little bit light. There's something too light about the sound of electrostatic speakers normally, but in that case it was phenomenal. Slightly warm but very neutral. Like when I say slightly warm, it's just an impression of warmness, but it's totally neutral. Very very fast. Felt like a sports car, a very high-end sports car. When I heard Mac Miller circles, I heard things I've never heard before in the sound, and I've played that in different formats on different system, but on that system I was able to, because of the speakers or because of the Baetis, the digital HiFi computer. I'll make a video on that specific equipment pretty soon. But either or, the details were incredible. I heard new tracks in the song. Like, you know, when you do a song, you make tracks of instruments. Well, I heard new details of instruments. I was very, 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 very impressed. I didn't hear any turntable. Like, we didn't play the Kronos Pro. We only played with the Baetis, so the streaming files from Tidal, and it was phenomenal. So it speaks a lot about the whole chain of equipment that Martin has. What I learned is that digital goes through an analog signal. So what I mean by that, it goes through cables with defects, and that can influence the information transmitted. So you know how much data you send through a cable and machines, but you don't know how many are going to be left at the end. So there's loss of information when you go through bad equipment, bad cables, and you get lost. You get a loss of information. You get less music, and that was my realization from Martin's system that was only digital files. Is I've never heard digital like this before. Period. We've seen on this channel that we are CEOs like we are consumers. And looking at Martin as an audio consumer, he's very involved in the audio industry as well. So I can only imagine him as a CEO, how it would be with the level of expectations and passion and things like that. So thank you so much for this time, Martin, and this opportunity to listen to this sound system. So most of the time in economy, passion drives the parade. Like, whether you look for a house, you look for a car, you look for a job, you look for everything, passion, and your self-identity is at stake every time. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please leave down comments. That's always appreciated to know about your opinion. And I hope to see you in the next episode, so please subscribe and like this video if you want. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.